Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Marjorie Taylor Greene just shuts down Jasmine Crockett because she doesn't understand how the census data works or how the maps are supposed to be drawn in her own home state. Let's dive in.
I want to make sure that we really get to the nitty-gritty on Texas, because this is hilarious to me. Texas added 2 seats. In 2020, according to the census, and we know that there was a significant undercount, specifically in Texas for a combination of reasons, but we know that specifically Texas added 4 million people. Of those 4 million people, do you want to take a guess at how many were Anglos? Just a guess.
I'd say a majority.
180,000. That's it, of 4 million. 95% of the people that were added, and we know that when it comes to minority populations, they tend to be undercounted. So get this, we added 4 million people. They were people of color. Texas got 2 new seats. So they took those black and brown and Asian bodies, and guess what? Do you think that we got a new black, brown, or Asian seat? Somehow, the way that they do their Republican math in the state of Texas, that amounted to 2 new white seats. Guess what? White Republican seats. We got 2 new Republican seats out of 4 million people of color. So let me tell you, they love to use our bodies to apportion us in an inaccurate way.
Chair recognizes Ms. Greene from Georgia.
It's extremely concerning, though, for most Americans that the 2020 census was found to have several miscounts, and you've been asked about this today in this hearing. Even more concerning is the fact that most of the miscalculations either benefited blue states with overcounts or harmed red states with undercounts. As you've already told us, 8 states were overcounted in the 2020 census, 6 of which were blue states. 6 states were undercounted, 5 of which were red states. Mr. Santos, understanding that you were not the director yet in 2020, why do you think these miscounts happened?
The miscounts occurred just as a matter of course of any decennial census. No census has ever been perfect, but they've always been good enough for the purposes that they're intended. So this is simply how things shook out. There was absolutely no consideration of red, blue, purple, or whatever. We simply stuck to our mission to count, to do a complete count. We did our quality checks, and we published the data to the president.
And Mr. Santos, you've described yourself as a scientist today. Isn't it important to be accurate in your science, so to speak, and in counting? Also, there's an actual law, Sentencing Reform Act of 1984, that really is your job to fine people $5,000 for refusing to answer questions on the census. Was this a law that you enforced? Did you enforce this law in states that were overcounted and states that were undercounted after the census?
Yeah, we are a statistical agency, not an enforcement agency, so we've never enforced that.
So no one was fined. So there were overcounts, there were undercounts, and no one was fined according to the law, and the numbers shook out and were accepted. Many of my colleagues have brought up the fact that Article 1 of the Constitution requires a census every 10 years to determine how many congressional seats and electoral votes states receive. This is incredibly important. In Congress, with close party margins, this apportionment can be the difference between being in the majority and being in the minority. In tight presidential elections, thankfully this one wasn't tight at all. President Trump overwhelmingly won. But it can determine the winner, these apportionments can. In other words, the census is more than a mere survey of the demographics of the citizenry. It directly affects election integrity. We have a bill, H.R. 7109, the Equal Representation Act. This bill would statutorily add a citizenship question to the decennial census for 2030 and beyond, and it will exclude aliens from the apportionment base. The Senate hasn't taken up this bill yet, but hopefully they will next session. And this way, there will be a citizenship question, and non-citizens will no longer be included in the count for reapportionment when that's done. This certainly would change the makeup of Congress. But let's also talk about, some of my colleagues across the aisle have brought up that black and brown voters weren't counted in the census as well. One of my colleagues from Texas was saying that this led to 2 more white representatives being sent to the House of Representatives. I think it's important to note that black and brown people can vote Republican as well, and they don't have to vote Democrat every single time.
Let's start off with what was just talked about. The whole idea that black and brown voters don't vote Republican has been bunk. Donald Trump won. All right, he won the majority of Latino men. Okay, that is sort of a trend that's been happening. More black men are now voting for Republicans and people like Donald Trump. And to make matters even crazier, it's caused the Democrats' brains to completely fry. For instance, Tim Scott was trending this morning, the morning of this filming, that is, and the response to that has been cataclysmic. People are losing their minds on the Democrat Party because they're starting to lose the narrative. Gen X men are starting to realize the Democrats do not offer me a good deal. Republicans say, hey, we want to enable you to own your own business and own your own home. Democrats say, hey, we want to tax you into oblivion. We don't care if you own your own business or own your own home. That is boiled down, and as reductive as I can possibly be, the difference between the two parties. And particularly ever since Trump came along, that has just smashed open the doors to the point of which people are going, yeah, we don't believe in the old narrative anymore. Hey, y'all. Experts say they rig the markets, print the money, and manipulate the system. But here's the truth. They can't print gold. While the dollar weakens, physical gold and silver stay real, tangible, uncontrolled. When banks go digital and emergencies lock you out of your own funds, gold and silver won't need an internet connection or government permission. Their value is outside the system, a time-tested insurance policy against tyranny, inflation, and economic resets. So don't wait until the trap is sprung. Own what the elites hoard behind closed doors. Physical gold and silver off the grid, because when the system fails, real money talks. And to help you learn more about owning physical gold and silver, we have partnered with the great company Goldco, which supports this channel, which we deeply appreciate. So check out politibralgold.com for more info and see if you might even qualify for free silver. That's politibralgold.com. And when it comes to the census data, funny that Jasmine Crockett is talking in these racial terms. The reality is, well, let's just state it out. 14 states or state equivalent are estimated to have an undercount or overcount. All right, the undercount states: Arkansas, Florida, Illinois, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Texas. What do these states have in common? One of them's a Democrat state, a very gerrymandered Democrat state. Illinois is just loaded with evil people because they can't gerrymander properly. There's a way you're supposed to do it, by the way, and I'll get to that in a moment. They're all Republican states, with one exception, the gerrymandered Illinois. The overcounts, listen to this: Delaware, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, Ohio, Rhode Island, and Utah. There are 2 states that have something in common. There are only 2 Republican ones, Utah and Ohio. Ohio also used to be a battleground state about 15 years ago. It is no longer, because the Midwest has started to realize that, Democrats can't govern. And then some of the other states like Wisconsin and Michigan are starting to realize, not only can Democrats can't govern, they're doing stupid, crazy, woke things that will hurt the future for my children. Parents are starting to realize that the Democrat Party offers you nothing. Nothing. And so it's very interesting to note that the overcount, however, in these states, most of them, for instance, Delaware, Hawaii, and Rhode Island, they don't have a lot of electoral power. So it's not going to radically change the map. What it is going to change, however, is states like Minnesota and Massachusetts. Minnesota has a very weird way that they've apportioned out. Actually, no, I take that back. It's not weird. It's actually the right way to properly apportion out your state so that people and land itself gets proper representation. Remember, you're not just representing people, you're also representing resources. And that in of itself explains a lot of the ways that rural Republican states tend to have their districts built around. It's built more around land. But because of the Voting Rights Act, you are supposed to make sure that minorities do have a voice in the federal government. So when the southern states, the states with the black belt, okay, and I'm not talking about karate, those states end up specifically drawing maps to represent minority voters in what is called minority majority districts, and that way they get their abilities to send someone of their choosing, in particular, to Congress. Now, the Supreme Court, I think, is taking a look at this law, and I don't blame them for doing so, but I also understand the spirit of this law, and I understand why it's happening, and I'm not that much against it. It is a good idea in a country that took a long time to give people certain rights. Yeah, our history isn't great, but the cool thing about America is we keep getting better. The weird thing, however, is we got to this weird tipping point where we reached the top of the mountain, and then we decided to climb back down and call it progress. And that's what the Democrat Party more often than not offers. And that's why so many people are starting to become Republicans, but more importantly, Trump voting Republicans. There's been a trend recently in the past couple of off years in our electoral process where we've noticed that Republican votes go down when Trump's not on the ballot. It is a very interesting concept to notice. And that tells me that the American people are wanting a change, and they do not trust Democrats to give it, and they don't fully trust Republicans to enact it. That is the reality. That's why I put on the MAGA. You know what? As a matter of fact, since this was in arm's reach, granted, it's not the full-blown hat. It's the Make Alexandria bartend again, which is funny in of itself, but it's why I have to put on this hat. All right? Historically speaking, my family is not a MAGA family. We're not Jacksonian Republicans. But things have to change. Things need to be changed in this country, and it terrifies me, the rhetoric that's coming out of the left, the rhetoric that Jasmine Crockett herself is spewing here is dangerous. And we're starting to see it with people like Kathy Hochul, the witch from New York. Quite literally, this woman, I'm 99% sure she rides a broom to work. One of the most evil people I've ever had to encounter in politics. The rhetoric is getting worse on the Democrat side because their brains have been broken. They don't understand that they've screwed up. And Republicans don't understand that they aren't doing enough to change things. And so that's why I put on the hat. That's why I say what I say. That's why I do what I do. And if you agree with me, let me know. But if you disagree, also let me know. That's what the comment section is for, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed the segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.